So I think predeterminations are misunderstood. I think there's an assumption sometimes that they are required. And also they can look super official. So it's easy to think of them as a promise of coverage or payment. In fact, I commonly hear predetermination or pre-estimate said synonymously with pre-authorization, which if you're talking about a PPO carrier, they are absolutely not. So in reality, they are just an estimate. And if you and your staff don't understand that and explain that to your patients, you are inviting confusion, complaints, and write-offs.
Welcome to the Truth Decay Podcast, talking dollars and cents with Sara Baker and LaRae McMullen.
So today, LaRae, we are digging into predeterminations. They are sometimes called pre-treatment estimates, right? And basically they're a tool to help patients understand their potential costs before treatment starts.
Yeah, but here's the catch. Predeterminations, they're not guarantees. So especially under a PPO plan, they're optional estimates and that's it.
Yes, contrast that with pre-authorizations,
Yeah.
which are common under DHMO plans. So many offices that use the term predetermination and pre-authorization interchangeably, especially in PPO offices, they're not using them correctly, right? They are not the same thing. Pre-authorizations are often required for certain procedures and confirm that treatment aligns with coverage. And again, those are typically with DHMOs.
Yeah.
And you have to get certain things, pre-authorized.
Yeah.
And if you don't get that pre-authorization and you do the treatment anyway, there will be zero pay. So in offices that take DHMOs, they are contracted with them, they hopefully understand how important those pre-authorizations are, and contrast that with predeterminations, which are not necessary, they are optional, and they are estimates.
Right. So quick summary for everyone listening. Predetermination equals an estimate and pre-authorization equals a necessary step to confirm and allow certain coverage for DHMO plans. Both can be helpful, but both do come with some fine print.
And if your team doesn't understand the difference, you are going to run into big problems, specifically with patient expectations and the success of your billing systems.
All right, Sarah, so let's start with the pros of predeterminations because there are some legitimate reasons that you would want to use a predetermination.
Totally. So first, financial clarity, right? I mean, it is another tool that you can give your patients an estimated breakdown of what their insurance might pay and what they might owe, right? So hopefully you're giving your patients a treatment plan from your own practice management software. There are some amazing functionalities in some of these practice management softwares to make them look super pretty and make them look, super understandable. And hopefully you've done your verification and the information in your practice management software is worth a damn and it's being, translated into that estimate that you're giving your patient. But a predetermination from your insurance carrier, it just provides an extra layer, right? Of here's what you potentially could pay. Typically it does say on there too, this is not a guarantee of payment. This is only an estimate. That can be helpful too. So financial clarity is probably the biggest pro for predeterminations.
Yeah. Second, it gives the patient a little bit more information so that they feel better about making the decision on whether they want to move forward with treatment, whether they want to consider any alternatives that you might have given them, or if they need to prepare financially.
Yeah. And third, reducing surprise bills, right? Because we've mentioned on this podcast multiple times, surprises are the enemy, right? You get an estimate that something is going to be covered at 50%, and you tell the patient, so here is, right, it says right here, not a guarantee of payment. Something happens. They max out unexpectedly, right? Another claim from another office gets processed before yours and they max out, or there's a frequency issue with that particular tooth and you didn't know that, and your system didn't know that, that can be fixed with verification, and a targeted appointment approach. So what happens then is that you've told the patient you could owe something, right? And so when all is said and done, you don't have a patient saying to you, you never said that to me.
Yeah.
You said this was all I'd have to pay. A predetermination can just help with that message.
Yeah. And then finally, verification of coverage and medical necessity. So a predetermination helps confirm that the proposed treatment meets the insurance company's criteria, at least at that point in time. Because like we all know things can change at the drop of a hat. Yeah. So at that point in time, when you're sending the predetermination in, it can confirm what the processing policies are. And again, just gives that extra layer of, a little bit of stability or ease that anxiety or whatever with the patient.
I do actually want to mention, this is something that we really commonly see, for instance, with root planing, right? Yeah.
Yes.
With deep cleanings. So the criteria for meeting coverage for perio root planing is getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
And arguably, providers will recommend, 4 quads of root planing when there is not bone loss yet, right? But a lot of these carriers are requiring evidence of bone loss in order to cover this. And which is honestly like what you're trying to prevent, right? Like, so it's
so weird.
Very frustrating that is something that you have to demonstrate, right? So doing a pre-estimate could be helpful in that if you do it and you submit it and it comes back and it says that it's not going to meet criteria, right? The office has an opportunity to speak to the patient and say, so your insurance carrier, your coverage won't cover these procedures because it doesn't meet the criteria that they have, and you can discuss with them how you feel about that. But you can then explain to them, we still really think that you need to get this done, and here's why. That is so much better of a plan than just doing it and then getting the denial on the back end. And now everybody's upset. Patient's mad that they didn't know there was going to be no coverage. You are faced with either collecting on an upset patient or writing it off. And so you did a bunch of treatment for free at this point, which is a bummer. When honestly, if you are able to communicate and explain with your patient that this is necessary, here's why we think that you need this, here's how it's going to benefit you, they may still agree to treatment. And then everybody's okay. And that predetermination helped you demonstrate to them that like there's not going to be coverage, and it just reduces surprises. So
I mean, that's a really good example, and I could talk for hours on that subject alone. But it's just what Sarah's kind of trying to explain is that if you get that predetermination and it comes back denied, that actually could be a help to you, because you could sit down with your patient and explain to them, if we wait to not do this until your insurance covers it, you could have a plethora of additional problems going on.
Yes.
This is why I suggest that we do it now, but I'm telling you that it's going to have to come out of pocket because your insurance, unfortunately, has this, outlier of when they're going to pay for it. So it can be a positive, even if it's denied.
Literally, you could even say, look, it's asking us to demonstrate loss of attachment and or bone loss.
Yeah.
You don't have that yet. We want to avoid that, right? So you could literally take what they're saying on the predetermination and tell them, use it to help you demonstrate why you don't want them to get to that point, right? And that's just off the top of our head with root planing, right? That opportunity exists with other treatment as well.
Of course, So what are some of the cons then, Sarah?
So cons are important, right? Because honestly, treatment delays, I think, are the number one. So predeterminations can take anywhere from instant, right? If you're doing it on a website where you can just bleep bloop bleep the treatment in.
Yeah, but
right?
let's just really quick. If it's instant, they're not searching a whole lot. They're literally just
No.
it's a computer reaching out, going, do they
Yes.
have coverage for that? They
Yes.
do. They haven't used it yet. Here you
Absolutely.
go. They're not
Yep.
looking at anything you're adding. They're not seeing if there's actual
That's
bone
correct.
loss or whatever the procedure needs. So just keep that in mind.
Yes. And like, again, we're trying to reduce surprises.
Yeah.
And if the treatment is urgent, like, especially if it's, something that the patient is like, yeah, go check right now, because I've got time right now. If you are over relying on that, then it's not a guarantee of payment.
Yeah.
So ultimately, you're getting this information that you could get instantly, or again, for treatment delays, if this is urgent, you're waiting
Yeah.
4 weeks.
Yeah.
You're waiting 6 weeks.
And it's still not a guarantee.
And it's not a guarantee.
Yeah.
And if it's kind of more significant treatment, it requires attachments typically, if it's an adult. So you've got perio charting, x-rays, intraoral pictures, whatever else you're sending, that's going to delay that processing further.
Yeah.
And in order for it ultimately to be told, this is not a guarantee of payment. So I would say the treatment delay is the number one.
Yeah.
Colin.
And then speaking of that, second would be that no guarantee of payment, right? So you might get the prettiest, most detailed predetermination EOB back, but then the actual payment that they end up making, it still changes. So annual maximums, policy changes, processing policies, among other things, it can throw all of that off. So you get that really pretty predetermination, you show the patient it's going to be covered, and you maybe forget or they don't notice to point out that it's still just an estimate. So everybody's banking that this is going to pay, and then something changes.
Yep. And third con, it's time-consuming admin work.
For sure.
So you're essentially doing the bulk of a claim submission up front. The submission, the attachments, all the documentation necessary, again, only to get an estimate back instead of a payment. And as a couple of people who have worked their way around an insurance aging report a time or two, you're essentially, if you're sending out pre-estimates and somebody is waiting on that pre-estimate in order to see if they want to move forward with treatment, you have to work that pre-estimate like you would work a claim.
Yeah.
Insurance aging reports are time consuming.
Yep.
They are detailed work. They are important work that you should be working once a week from top to bottom in your office. And a predetermination list is the same.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of admin work for no payment.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Instead of just kind of learning how to speak with your patient about what treatment they need and not what treatment is covered. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'd say number 4 would be a potential for errors. So if coding or documentation isn't perfect, your estimate could be wrong, and you may have lost that time and credibility.
Yeah. And finally, they just may not be necessary,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, especially for straightforward procedures. I know that actually carriers will encourage large treatment plans send a pre-estimate. I get it. I hear you for all the reasons we said before,
Yeah.
right? But for straightforward procedures, or when you've already verified the coverage thoroughly, if you're doing a targeted appointment approach and you've verified that day, the codes, what the percentages are, you're going to have that time investment will yield you just as good of a pre-estimate and, potential financial responsibility patient portion as waiting.
Sure.
So the time investment can be more trouble than it's worth if you are insisting on sending those predeterminations for those.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, they're both just an estimate, whether it's a big breakdown insurance verification, a targeted insurance verification, or a predetermination. They're all estimates. And the predetermination takes a lot of time. The targeted appointment approach is going to actually look a little bit deeper and see what that actual patient, not just generic processing policies for that plan, but what that actual patient has had. So at the end of the day, it's all just an estimate. So for all of those reasons and why, predeterminations are only a tool. They're not a requirement. They're also not a solution. So use them intentionally, but don't use them automatically.
Yes, intentionally, but not automatically. Yes. The bottom line, predeterminations / pre-estimates can be helpful, absolutely, for larger treatment plans or when you have a patient who specifically requests, or maybe they've given you some trouble in the past and you think that that might be a good tool to just have like one more thing to show them, sign that they've seen it, etc. That could be great. They're great for that.
Yeah, but when offices send everything, every single thing for a predetermination, it just gums up the whole process. You end up with treatment sitting on hold, patients waiting, and a bunch of confusion that didn't need to happen. It's not meant to replace real verification, right? It's if you don't explain that to the patient, it can really mess up their trust with the office.
And here is something crucial. Predeterminations are not a replacement for understanding how estimates work and for having a solid, consistent process for communicating with your patients about money, about their potential financial responsibility, about what estimates are. Like, don't, like you said, work them intentionally, not automatically.
Yeah.
So you have to still have a connection to this process and an understanding so that you can make sure that you're communicating with your patients effectively. Again, just doing something every time is not worth your time. You have to have results.
Yeah.
You have to have the ability to collect from these patients at the end. So that's what you want to focus on, is the efficacy of your process, not just like a checklist. Did it, sent it, waited,
getting really comfortable with that upfront communication about that money so that the back end isn't so surprising to everybody and hard to find.
Yep.
All right. So no matter what, your team should always explain 4 things. 1, this is an estimate. It's not a promise. 2, what potential financial responsibilities actually look like for that treatment plan, right? 3, sometimes insurance pays the estimated amount. Sometimes they pay less. And 4, we will keep you posted on what your insurance ultimately decides and whether you have an additional balance. So that is something that you need to get very comfortable saying to every patient, right? You're going to keep them posted on what their insurance ultimately pays, because that predetermination or insurance verification it's just an estimate.
That kind of clarity builds trust with your patients. And honestly, using a strong insurance verification process like our targeted appointment approach, which we discussed in episode 9, often gives you information just as accurate, if not faster, than a predetermination. And actually, I do want to say one of the lines that I like to say too, because it's absolutely true, is when you're explaining estimates, you don't have to just say, they may not pay as much as we think, very Eeyore, right? Like, you can say, listen, this is an estimate. They may pay more than we're estimating here. And we may owe you a refund when all is said and done, right? However, if in the event that they don't pay as much as we are estimating, you potentially could have a financial responsibility. We're going to keep you posted, etc. So it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom, and you can absolutely give them a little bit of hope because it's true, right? Like, it could go either way. Does it usually go the way where they're not paying as much? Yes, but the opposite is true as well, right? Use predeterminations when they make sense. So don't lean on them because you're nervous to have a real conversation about cost. Like, do not let your fear and do not let a culture of avoidance in your office prevent you from having a conversation regularly with patients that is going to yield collectible AR. Like, don't do it, because there is a real temptation to avoid a conversation right now just to add an accepted treatment plan and add production to the, to your numbers. It doesn't matter. Production is theoretical. Like, the number of production, it's theoretical. It's fully hinging on the success of the rest of your systems. Is your patient prepared to pay if your insurance doesn't pay? Like, how good is that going to be when all is said and done? So, like, please don't be nervous, and use predeterminations as a tool, and let that tool open up communications about what estimates are, about potential financial responsibility, and make it so that you're actually collecting the money and you're not writing things off.
Okay, so our top takeaways for today are predeterminations are estimates, not guarantees. Always frame them accurately when you present them to patients.
They can provide clarity, but they can also cause delays and confusion if used without explanation.
Yeah. A consistent process, verifying benefits, educating patients, and setting expectations, that matters a lot more than just that little small piece of paper.
Absolutely. I mean, you could literally do everything without sending one predetermination.
Yeah.
If you have those things in place, you don't need them. They're a tool, right? And other tools like a targeted appointment approach can be just as effective and a lot faster, But again, like to each their own.
Yeah.
Go listen to episode 9. So what are 2 action steps that our listeners can take today?
Well, first of all, review your predetermination process this week. When do you use them? Are you relying on them too often or without some clear disclaimers to your patients?
And the second is talk to your team and train them to clearly explain that predeterminations are estimates and practice using consistent language when presenting them. So like check to make sure that your team understands. Do they understand the difference between predeterminations and pre-authorizations? Are they using the terms correctly? And if you kind of feel like there's some training that needs to be done, provide that training, because this is vital that this information is communicated correctly.
Right. And so I think it's pretty safe to say that our final thought for today would be that predeterminations may look official, but they're really just an educated guess. So use them very wisely.
Yeah, and if you want our predetermination scripting template to give you some of those, some of that verbiage, then please go to our website, which is the truthdecaypodcast.com. Go to this episode. Also, we're going to have a quick reference pros and cons chart, just so you can kind of think about it, right? Again, it's not good or bad. It's not like one is the right decision and what's the wrong decision. It's just being, aware of what those pros and cons are so you can use them at the proper times. So check out our downloadables and hopefully, we're going to give you some information that you'll find useful.
Right. And if this episode helped you rethink your workflow, please leave us a review. We love hearing how these conversations impact your practice. And same token, if you have any questions based off of this that we maybe didn't touch on or that you want us to touch on a little bit more, feel free to send those in as well. We love questions and we love reviews.
Love it. So if you liked what you heard today, consider subscribing, please, on whatever platform you are listening on or watching. You know how we know we've done a time jump? My hair looks different. So, for more exciting things like our hair changing, consider subscribing. You can send us an email at hello@thetruthDecayPodcast.com or check us out at sddentalsolutions.com. We'd love to answer your questions. We would love to hear your thoughts about this. If you have any questions about this topic, please send them our way.
Yeah, and you can also find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. So I think LinkedIn has me, Sara, and our SD Dental Solutions on there. So 3 separate ways to find us on LinkedIn, and then Instagram and Facebook. So come find us on any of those platforms that you use. We'd love to see you.
Yep. That's it. Thank you guys all so terribly much for listening. We appreciate it. Thank you. Bye. We're like professional podcasters now.